الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله وكفى، وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. صدق الله العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون، والسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. The time and the period that which in which we are living in, many scholars, many ulama, and many people feel that this is the this is the time of fitna. We know that towards the end of time, there will be fitna that will be widespread. There will be trials, calamities, fitnas, and these fitnas will come like a wave upon wave. There will be dark, black. One fitna will not end, that another fitna will come upon. And one of the alamat, one of the signs, one of the great major signs of Qiyamah, because the signs of Qiyamah can be divided into two. There are minor signs and there are major signs. So one of the major signs of Qiyamah will be Khuruj Dajjal, that Dajjal will come out and the period of Dajjal will begin. And this is basically a period of the most intense kind of fitna, test and trial for the believers, where their very iman will be endangered. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he would speak to the Sahaba Ikram about the fitnas, among the fitna the most intense that he mentioned would be the fitna of Dajjal. And the Prophet ﷺ would warn the Sahaba Ikram about this fitna of Dajjal. And the warning would be most intense and most severe. It would be greater than any other warning about any other fitna that the Prophet ﷺ gave to the Sahaba. And many people, many ulama and scholars, they say that the actual Dajjal will come when the time is decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the time and zamana in which we are living in, we can see the precursors of Dajjal. So in one sense, we're already in that stage, in that age, in that history, in that time period where the fitnas are all around us, which are darkness upon darkness. The precursors have already begun. And in such a time, the Prophet ﷺ said that when you reach, when you're in that moment, when you're in that period where fitnas are all around you and they're increasing day by day, their shiddat, their intensity is increasing day by day. Qital and killing and murder and genocide, all of this is increasing day by day. War and destruction is increasing day by day. And the believers, they feel that their very iman is being endangered, that their very iman is under attack. And you can begin to see the precursors of the Dajjal and the fitna of the Dajjal all around you. So in such a time, there is, in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that there is one surah that we are taught we should recite, and we should try to live by that surah. And that surah is Surah Kahf. Surah Kahf, to recite, to do tilawat of this surah, and to understand this surah, the message of the surah, and to implement that message, that lesson, the benefits in this surah in our life. This is the remedy. This is the treatment. This is the way in which a person can safeguard their iman in this time of fitna. This is the remedy by which a person can save their iman when these Dajjali fitnas and the precursors of Dajjal, these are all around us. So in contemporary times, in times that we live in, wherever we look, we can see that these fitnas are increasing day by day. And one of the names of Dajjal, one of the meanings of this word Dajjal is that deception, that this would be an age of great, massive deception, where people would be deceived, where haqq will appear as batil, and the batil will be presented as haqq. There will be this mixing, this will be this purity will mix with impurity, impurity will mix with purity. You will have these munafiqeen, these hypocrites, you will have people presenting haqq as batil. And for a layman, it will become very difficult to pierce through this deception and see and realize and recognize what is haqq, what is the truth. So at such a time, again, the Prophet ﷺ has given us, and this is one of the big ihsan and the favors of the Prophet ﷺ as being rahmatul lil alameen, as a mercy for the entire humanity, that he gave us, he told us what the hakikat, the reality of that time period would be, and also gave us a solution. And in the solution, he mentioned that this surah, Suratul Kahf, this is a surah that we need to understand. So that is why we thought that inshallah, we will begin this surah and try to understand this surah. For this has a particular relevance for us. Every surah has a relevance for us. But this in particular, because of the fitnas that we see, and because of the merits and the fazail and the virtues that the Prophet ﷺ have mentioned about this particular surah, how this surah, reciting this surah, learning this surah, understanding this surah, reflecting upon this surah, studying this surah, and most of all, implementing the lessons in the surah, how all of this can help a person safeguard their very iman in these times of fitna. There are some surahs which have very special virtues associated with them, which come in ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For example, Surah Fatiha has its own merits. Surah Baqarah has its merits. Surah Mulk, Surah Kafirun, Surah Ikhlas, the last two surahs, Surah Falak and Surah Nas. And in the same way, this surah, Suratul Kahf, this also has several merits, several virtues, several fazail have been mentioned about this surah in the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we want to first begin with looking at those ahadiths that mention the fazail of this surah. So the first hadith, Hazrat Usaid bin Huzair radiallahu ta'ala an, he narrates, and he says that once I came in the khidmah in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I said that, Ya Rasulallah, inni kuntu akrahul bariha surat al-kahfi, faja'a shay'un hatta ghatta fami. That, O Messenger of Allah, last night I was reciting Surah Kahf, and I saw that a thing appeared and came near to me, and it almost covered my face, my mouth. And the Prophet ﷺ replied that Mah tilka sakina ja'at hatta tasma al-Quran. That this was sakina. This was that serenity, that tranquility, sakina, which actually came to listen to your tilawat al-Quran. That sakina descended. So what this means is that there was an angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Surah Kahf is recited, the angels of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they come down from the heavens to the earth, and they bring sakina and tranquility for the person who's reciting this surah. Then second hadith mubarakah, which is narrated by Hazrat Soban radiallahu ta'ala an, who said that the Prophet ﷺ said that man qara al-ashr al-awakhira min surah al-kahfi فَإِنَّهُ عِصْمَةٌ لَهُ مِنَ الدَّجَّالِ. That whoever recites the last 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, these last 10 ayat of Surah Kahf will become a safeguard, a source of najat and salvation for that person from the fitna of Dajjal. The last 10 ayat, whoever recites the last 10 ayat of this surah, they will be saved from the fitna of Dajjal. Then third hadith Mubarakah, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala is the Ravi, and he narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said that man qara al-kahfa yawm al-jumu'ah fahuwa ma'asumun ila samaniyati ayyamin min kulli fitna takunu wa in kharaja ad-dajjalu usima minhu. That whoever has a habit of reciting, even the last hadith was about not once in your life. This is important, that when these hadiths mubarakah, they come and they say that if you do this, then you will get this fayda and this benefit. It means that if you do that amal regularly, if you make that part of your daily regimen, you make that your ma'amul, not like once in a life. So whoever recites the last 10 ayat of Surah Kahf as a daily regimen, then they will be saved from the fitna of Dajjal. And similarly here in this third hadith, whoever has a habit of reciting Surah Kahf on Friday, then that person will be saved from every kind of fitna for 8 days. For 8 days, that person will be saved from every single kind of fitna. And even if within those 8 days, the Dajjal was to come out, this person would be saved from the fitna of the Dajjal as well. So the fazilat of reciting Surah Kahf on Friday. Then In a hadith which is mentioned in Sunan Abi Dawood, Hazrat Abu Darda radiallahu ta'ala an is the Ravi, he narrates that man hafiza ashara ayatim min awwali suratil kahf usima min fitnatid dajjal. That whoever memorized the first 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, they will be saved from the fitna of Dajjal. So we already saw that whoever recites the last 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, and now this is about the first 10 ayat of Surah Kahf. If a person can memorize the first 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, if you memorize one ayat every day, in 10 days you memorize the first 10 ayat. But look at the fazilat, look at the virtue that whoever memorizes the first 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, usima min fitnatid dajjal, that person will be saved from the fitna of Dajjal. Then in a hadith which was narrated in Musnad Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahmatullah alayh, Hazrat Muaz radiallahu ta'ala an is Darawi, he narrates that the Prophet said that man qara'a awwala suratil kahf wa akhiraha kanat lahu nuran min qadamihi ila ra'si. That whoever recites the starting of Surah Kahf, yani first 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, and they recite the last ayat of Surah Kahf, yani the last 10 ayat of Surah Kahf, then that person will be given a light, a nur, which will extend from his head to his feet. Yani from the tips of his hair to the soles of his feet, that person will be covered with the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Light, radiance, spiritual radiance. And then the hadith continues that waman qara'aha kullaha kanat lahu nuran ma bayna samai ilal ard. That whoever recited the whole surah, the entire surah, not just the starting and the ending, but the entirety of the surah, then for that person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide a nur, a light, a spiritual illumination and radiance that will extend from the heavens to the earth. Allahu Akbar. Such a tremendous, immense reward. Spiritual radiance extending for that person from the heavens till the earth. Amma Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said that man qara'a min suratil kahfi ashra ayatin inda manamihi usima min fitnatid dajjal. That whoever has a habit of reciting 10 ayat from Surah Kahf before sleeping. So we see that there is now a condition here about sleep. Before sleeping, if someone recites Surah Kahf, 10 ayat, whether starting or ending, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save that person from the fitna of Dajjal. Then the seventh hadith, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates from the Prophet that Suratul Kahfi tud'a fit Tawrat al-ha'ila tahulu bayna qari'iha wa bayna an-nar. Now this is an interesting hadith, for it mentions that Surah Kahf was called Ha'ila in the Torah. We know that there were previous scriptures sent by Allah Ta'ala, and even they made mention of this surah, Surah Kahf. And the previous books, they had a name for this surah. They called it Ha'ila, Ha'il, something that comes in between. And the meaning was that this surah comes in between the reciter and the fire of Jahannam. That this surah will save a person from the punishment in Akhirah. And The eighth hadith, Hazrat Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala, and he narrates that the Prophet ﷺ said that al-baytul lazi tukra'u fihi suratul kahf la yadkhuluhu shaytanun tilkal layla. Another beautiful, very profound hadith, very relevant, very pertinent for all of us. That house in which Surah Kahf is recited, a house, a home where people have a habit of regularly reciting Surah Kahf, then the night when Surah Kahf is recited, Shaitan does not get permission to enter that home. And this is suggesting that Shaitan will not be able to spend the night in such a home. And obviously, when Shaitan will not be there, then a person will be saved from all types of sins which Shaitan makes a person, which makes a person commit those sins. A person will be saved from the in-house fighting, which is caused by Shaitan. A person will be saved from the Shaitani wasawis and the whisperings and all other Shaitani effects. There will be barakah, there will be serenity, sakina, and tranquility in such a home for that night. And imagine how azim is this surah, that if you can recite this surah before going to sleep, then Shaitan will not be able to enter that home. So if you can recite this during the day, Shaitan will not be able to enter during the day. And you recite this, you will be able to save yourself from the fitna of Dajjal. Very azim fazail. And in other hadiths, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned something about Dajjal and said that, and this is really, really amazing. The words of the Prophet ﷺ, we know that Dajjal is one of the most intense fitna. It comes that if you hear that Dajjal is here, then don't even inquire about, because if you inquire about Dajjal and you get curious, so let me go meet him or let me go see him, then you will fall into the fitna of Dajjal. You will end up giving your iman. And it's mentioned that there will be some people at that time who will be very strong in their iman, and they would imagine that we are strong in our iman, nothing will happen to us, we can go confront him, let's go meet him. And when they will encounter him, when they will meet him, their iman would be shaken up, and they would eventually end up losing their iman just simply because of that interaction with Dajjal. So if you keep that whole context in mind, and then we look at this hadith, and in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said something extraordinary, that فَمَنْ أَدْرَكَهُ مِنْكُمْ فَلْيَقْرَأْ عَلَيْهِ فَوَاتِحَ سُورَةِ الْكَهْفِ فَإِنَّهَا جِوَارُكُمْ مِنْ فِتْنَتِهِ. That whoever amongst you, they end up meeting Dajjal. And not that you are going out and seeking him on your own, but you are on your own way, and then somehow you encounter Dajjal in your life. Then you wanted to avoid him, but you end up meeting him. Now, that interaction takes place. So, adrakahu, you just end up meeting him, you encountered him. At that time, the Prophet ﷺ gave us an advice that what is a person supposed to do? What should you do? What should a believer do? That you should recite the first few ayat of Surah Kahf. So you meet Dajjal, Dajjal is in front of you, you have encountered him. We are told that at that moment, recite the initial ayat of Surah Al-Kahf. For this is the surah which will save you from the fitna of Dajjal. So even If you end up meeting Dajjal, if you can recite this surah to him, in front of him, Allah Ta'ala will save you from the fitna. And the 10th and the last fazila, which was mentioned in the hadith, is that there is a lot of virtue and reward of reciting this surah on Friday. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that man qara'a surat al-kahfi yawm al-jumu'ah ada'a lahu min nuri ma bayna al-jumu'atayn. That whoever recites Surah Kahf on Friday, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant him a nur, a light, from this Friday till the next Friday. So the whole week will be spent in nur, with radiance, with illumination. So we should try to recite Surah Kahf on Friday. And if we can try to memorize the surah, then that is Subhanallah, Nurun ala Nur, so that we can save ourselves from shaitan, we can save ourselves from Dajjal, the fitnas of Dajjal, and we can cover ourselves with the Nur. We can get this protection, this special khas protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this, as we can see, is an Azim surah with Azim benefits. And when we say that this is a surah that protects a person from fitnas, it's a shield against fitna. So it's not just the fitna of Dajjal, even though that's the greatest, but it's not just limited to that. There are other fitnas that a person might experience in their life as well. This surah helps a person in those situations as well. So, for example, if there is a fitna from your boss, your employer, your ruler, the government, or sometimes you are in tough, a person might find themselves to be in a tough position, whether it's work environment, it's a tough manager, tough boss, or whether it's at a government level, tough government, Islamophobic, and it's difficult to practice Islam in a particular community, in a particular city, in a particular country. The laws are quite strict and stringent. That becomes a fitna. This surah helps a person in that situation as well. Sometimes there is fitna with respect to our life within the home. Person has tests and trials and calamities happening within their family life, home, within the confines of their home. Sometimes there is financial difficulty. Because of wealth and finances and money, a person ends up in some fitna. Some bankruptcy happens, or someone frauds, there's a deception, some tax evasion, something, some false case is made against them. So that becomes a fitna. So this surah helps the person in those situations as well. And even spiritual fitnas like arrogance or envy or shaitan or your nafs, your own nafs, the base desires that we have, the fitna of our own nafs, the fitna of shaitan. So every fitna, any type of fitna, whether it's the fitna of shaitan, the fitna of our own nafs, the fitna of people around us, the makhluk, the fitna of mal, wealth, the fitna of jamal, of beauty, whatever, every kind of fitna, this surah, this blessed surah has teachings for us, has guidance for us, that it can save us from these fitnas. And one of the guidance that this surah gives us is it enables us to realize and recognize the reality of this dunya, that this dunya eventually is going to come to an end. It's a temporary abode. It's fleeting. So one should not preoccupy themselves with this dunya alone. One should not be overly preoccupied with the dunya. Don't give everything. Don't make this dunya the be-all and the end-all of your life. There is another world to come after this dunya. And make preparation for that world to come. Make preparation for the akhirah, and for that try to acquire ilme nafi, knowledge which is going to benefit you in akhirah. Try to do ibadat and amal salih, good deeds which will help you in your akhirah, and also try to remain steadfast on this path of ilm and amal, and having sincerity in your acquisition of ilm and amal upon the deen. So we thought that inshallah there's so many fazail and so much virtue and merit attached to this surah. We will inshallah recite this surah and study this surah. And today is an introduction. So uh, we want to begin first with the Shan-e Nuzul. That what is the context of the revelation for this surah? Historically speaking, when was this surah revealed to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? So, as all of us are familiar with the seerah, that when the Prophet ﷺ began the message, to preach the message of Deen, this was in Makkah Mukarramah. So the Mushrikeen, the Ahl Quraysh, they opposed the Prophet ﷺ, and even those who were close to the Prophet ﷺ, the relatives of the Prophet ﷺ, the uncles, even the friends, they all became enemies of the Prophet ﷺ because of this message. They had enmity and hatred, and they started making efforts and plans, strategies to stop this preaching and teaching, to hurt the Prophet ﷺ, harm the Prophet ﷺ, and ultimately even to Nauzubillah, martyr the Prophet ﷺ. And when they continued with all of these efforts and they realized that still they were not able to attain their goal, their efforts were unsuccessful, then they thought that uh, they tried another strategy, another tactic, which is that they thought that let's think of some way, some ploy, some strategy by which we can show to the people that the Prophet ﷺ is not a true messenger. And that would then take the people's iman away. No longer, people would no longer trust the Prophet ﷺ. They would no longer have reliance upon Nabi alayhi salam. Their i'timad will be taken away. So they were thinking on those lines now, how to show to the people that the Prophet ﷺ is not a true messenger. Al-iyadu billah. So what these mushrikeen in Makkah, these were idol worshippers, Quraysh in Makkah. What they did was they sent uh, some of their people to the Jews who were the Ahl Kitab, the people of Kitab, who had ilm, who had revelation before, prior to the coming of Islam. So these mushrikeen in Makkah, they sent two people in particular, Nazar bin Haris and Uqba bin Ubay Mu'ayt. They sent these two people from Makkah Mukarramah to Medina Tayyibah, where the Jews were living, the Jews were residing, with this message that we want you to help us against Islam. And if you can guide us to something by which we can show to the people that the Prophet ﷺ is not a true messenger. Teach us something. Maybe tell us what we can ask the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ will not be able to reply to that question. And in this way, it will become apparent to the people that he is not a true messenger. Alayhi billah. Because these Jews were, on one hand, they were people of Kitab, Ahle Kitab, and there were scholars among them as well, Jewish scholars. But at the same time, they had enmity, hasad, for the Prophet ﷺ. So these Jewish ulama, they 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 agreed, and they did a lot of reflection upon their own kitab and deliberation, contemplation, and after that they came up with three questions. And they told that contingent of the Quraysh, told them that go back and ask your Prophet ﷺ, ask the Prophet ﷺ, Saluhu an salasin, ask him about three questions. Ask him these three questions. Saluhu an fityatin zahabu fi dahr al-awwal. Ma kana amruhum. فإنه قد كان لهم حديث عجيب. First question you should ask him is that tell us about those young men who sought refuge in a cave. What is their story? What are their details? Now, the mushrikeen living in Makkah Mukarramah, they had no idea, no clue about what this incident was. This was mentioned in the previous books that were present with the Jews, the Ahle Kitab. They knew about that story, that event. So this was the first question. They posed this question to the Prophet Sallallahu. Second, Saluhu an rajulin tawafin قد بلغ مشارق الأرض ومغاربها ما كان نبوه. That second question asked the Prophet ﷺ that who was that king who traveled a lot and who traveled from the east and to the west and then also made a wall at one point in this journey. Ask him about that king. Who was that king? And finally, third question, Saluhu ani ruh ma hiya. Ask him about the ruh, the spirit, that what is human ruh? What is the essence, the reality of ruh? When these two people, uh, they came back to Makkah Mukarramah, so the Quraysh were really happy. The Mushrikeen were really happy. And they said that now we will ask the Prophet ﷺ such questions which he will not be able to reply, and it will become apparent to the people that he is no longer, he's not true. He's not a true messenger. And truly, these questions were of that nature that an ordinary person could not reply. You had to be a Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and receive revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then and only then could you reply to these three questions. Otherwise, anyone else, they wouldn't be able to reply. And this was actually the reason why even the Jews had said that فَإِنْ أَخْبَرَكُمْ عَنْهَا فَهُوَ نَبِيٌّ وَإِنْ لَمْ يَفْعَلْ فَالرَّجُلُ مَتَقَبِّلٌ. That if this person, yani they were referring to the Prophet ﷺ, that if he is able to answer these three questions correctly, then know that فَهُوَ نَبِيٌّ, then he is a Nabi. No doubt about that. But if he is not able to answer these three questions correctly, then know that he is a liar and he's just making up all of this stuff. This deen, he just made it up. So now these mushrikeen, the idol worshippers of Makkah Mukarramah, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they asked these three questions to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ promised to them that أخبركم بما سألتم عنه غدا ولم يستثني. The Prophet ﷺ said that I will give you the reply to these three questions tomorrow. However, the Prophet ﷺ forgot to say Insha'Allah. Insha'Allah. The Prophet ﷺ had this thought in his heart that Allah will send His mercy. Allah Ta'ala will send a revelation. Jibreel alayhi salam will come and he will provide the answer, and then I can answer these questions. But he forgot to say Insha'Allah. And then what happened? That فَمَكَثَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ فِيمَا يَزْعَمُونَ خَمْسَ عَشَرَةَ لَيْلَةً. That the Prophet ﷺ, he continued waiting for the revelation to come, for Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam to come with the answers to these questions. And while waiting, 15 days passed by. but there was no revelation. لا يحدث الله إليه في ذلك وحيا ولا يأتيه جبريل حتى أرجف أهل مكة. 15 days passed by in such a manner that no revelation came to the Prophet ﷺ. Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam also did not come to the Prophet ﷺ. And as a result, the mushrikeen in Makkah, they started making fun of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. And this really uh, hurt the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. And after 15 days, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this surah, Suratul Kahf. And in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the answer to those three questions. In fact, the first question, which was about the ruh, which in our sequence was the last question, the reply to that was given in Surah Bani Israel. And the other two questions, they were, the reply to those two questions were given here in this surah. So this is the Shani Nazul. Now, before we begin with the ayat, we want to understand the summary of this surah. What is, if you were to ask this question, what is the main theme, the core lesson, the summary, the essence, right? What we say, lubbe lubab, right? The essence of this surah. If we can keep that essential lesson in front of us, then inshallah it will help us to understand the whole surah and the flow of the surah and the different events which are mentioned in the surah itself. So that is what we want to try to understand first. That what is the essence, the core lesson? And I remember that several years ago, Alhamdulillah, we had this great fortune and blessing that we studied this surah line by line with our own sheikh. And in that when it was a durus about Surah Kahf, where every day there would be dars, and we started from the start and then all the way completed the whole surah in a sequence of lessons and over several days. So in that durus, at the start of the dars, the sheikh, he mentioned that he had been studying and researching and investigating about this surah for 2 years, almost 2 full years. He said that I've been reading the tafsir, all the different tafsir on Surah Kahf for 2 whole years. In that time, he said that, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the tawfiq that I was able to read more than 120 tafsir on just Surah Kahf, in which about 30 tafsir were written in Urdu language, one was written in Farsi, Persian, and the remaining were in Arabic language. And he explained that after going through all of these more than 120 tafsir on Surah Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened upon my heart that what is the real and the main lesson that this surah is giving us. What is that main lesson? Many people, if you ask them generally that what do you know about Surah Kahf? So as a first impression, a lot of people think that this surah is basically about a group of young men who wanted to safeguard their iman and hence they went inside a cave. That is the story that a lot of people have in their mind when they think about Surah Kahf, which is right because that's one surah, and then that's one story which is mentioned here in the surah. But that is not the real message. That is not the real da'wah, the claim of this surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this surah in such a beautiful manner. There is such a deep mystery here, a profound lesson here, that a person becomes amazed at the symmetry, the balance, the harmony that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in this surah. So what is that central idea? So, inshallah, once we can understand the central idea, we'll be able to better understand the real objective of this surah. So what is that idea? The Shaykh explained this as follows. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tests a person with 8 situations. A human being is tested in this world by Allah Ta'ala in 8 different things. 8 types of halat, 8 types of circumstances can come in a person's life. Number 1, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests a person by giving izzat, honor. That's a test from Allah when you are in a position of honor. Number 2, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you by taking away that honor and giving you a humiliation or embarrassment or zillat, by making you go through some zillat in your life. Third, a person is tested by health. Allah gives health to a person and this is a test. Fourth, Allah tests a person by taking away that health, by putting a person through some illness or sickness. 5, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests a person by giving that person some nafa, some profit, some benefit in this life. And similarly, number 6, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests a person by taking back that profit and making that person face some loss, undergo or suffer some losses in this world. And number 7, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests a person by giving happiness to them, things that will make them happy. Happiness is also a test. And then sometimes Allah Ta'ala tests a person by taking back that happiness and making a person go through a time of sadness, sorrow, and grief in their life. So in total, there are 8 ways in which a person is tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Honor, izzat, zillat, embarrassment or humiliation, sehat, health, sickness, profit, loss, happiness, and sadness. Every person, they are in at least one of these 8 situations in every moment of their life. We just pause and we can see where we are right now in this present moment. It might be a moment of happiness for us. It might be a moment of sadness. It might be a moment of izzat and honor. It might be a moment of health. Every human being, they are in at least one of these situations, in one of these 8 situations. And these situations, these 8 circumstances, they keep changing in a person's life. They keep changing. Now, if you want to make it even more simple, we can summarize these 8 circumstances into two halat, into 2 situations. Yani you can subdivide, or you can rather simplify these 8 into 2. You can call one of them are good halat, favorable circumstances, and second are unfavorable or difficult circumstances. So sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests you by giving and providing you favorable circumstances, favorable situations in life. And other times, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you by making you go through some unfavorable situation in life. So, favorable situations, when things are good, when everything is going according to the plan, that's also a test. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see in that test, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see whether my servant is doing shukr for the blessings that I have given him. It's a test of shukr. Whether a person, they're expressing their gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings that they're enjoying during that time. And when a person is going through some bad time, so you have a good time and a bad time, right? Good time, it's an imtihan, it's a test of shukr. And when a person is going through a bad time in their life, that is also a test. Allah Ta'ala wishes to see whether a person is doing sabr or not, whether they're exercising patience or not. So we can conclude that there are two papers. These tests and trials and different imtihan that exams that come in a person's life, you can summarize that there are basically two exams. Two exams. One exam is called the exam of sabr, and the other exam is called the exam of shukr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes gives us blessings, makes us go through good times, and that is the exam of shukr, whether we do shukr or not, whether we solve that equation properly or not. So, for example, if a person is going through a good time in their life, they have lots of blessings, and if that makes them ghafil and heedless of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they start disobeying Allah Ta'ala, start committing sin, they become preoccupied with the dunya, they start giving into the desires of their nafs, then it means that this person has failed the exam, the paper of shukr. In the same way, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends some difficult, a bad time to that person, and in that bad time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to see whether my servant is exercising sabr or not. And if during that time a person does not exercise sabr, rather they start complaining and they start losing hope in the rahmat of Allah, they become depressed and they start faltering in their deen, they leave making dua, they leave their ibadah, they're not able to exercise patience, it means that this person has failed in this exam of sabr. And on the other hand, when a person gets a blessing and they do shukr, and when they go through some tough time, they do sabr, it means that they passed both those exams. Now, in this surah, there is such a beautiful harmony here. Yani, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this surah, it's quite amazing. What is the link? What is the rabt? So we see that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam with these two papers, these two exams. First, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam in Jannat so that he would do shukr. And second, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam not to eat from this particular tree. This was the exam of sabr. Sabr and shukr, two exams. Now, as for the exam of shukr, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam was successful in that exam. But the exam of sabr, in that, Shaitan, he took qasam and he whispered to Amma Hawa alayhi salam and to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam and he eventually succeeded in deceiving them. And the Quran says, وَقَاسَمَهُمَا, that shaitan is swearing and he's tempting them, and eventually they make a slip. And when Allah Ta'ala had promised that don't eat from that tree, they made a slip and they thought that shaitan wants their well-being. So they ended up eating from that tree. And hence, when they ate from that tree, they were not able to succeed in that in that exam of sabr. Now, when they were not able to succeed in the exam of sabr, so then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought them out of the Jannat. And in this way, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam came here on the face of this earth. And not only Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, but then Ibn Adam, all the descendants of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, they also now have to live their life on this dunya. So the halat, the situations of sabr, it's actually difficult to do sabr in those times. Both exams are difficult. And just like Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam was tested by both of these exams, in the same way, Bani Adam, us, the children of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, now that we are here on this earth, we will be, for as long as we live, we will also be tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the same manner. In the same manner, Allah ta'ala will test us. Allah ta'ala will test us on this exam of sabr and this exam of shukr. We also have the same two exams, the same two papers. Like sometimes people have different papers, like a math paper, biology, etc. These are the two papers that every descendant of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, they need to give while they are here living their life on this earth. Sabr and shukr. And if you reflect for a moment, then many of us might feel that when it comes to the exam of shukr, we somehow might be able to pass that exam. But when it's a time for sabr, an exam of sabr, that is when many of us, we fail. Many of us, we lose hope. Many of us, we feel distant from Allah Ta'ala. Many of us, we start complaining about Allah. Many of us, we show that we are the opposite of Sabirin. We are reckless and heedless. A child passes away, and then the mother, she starts saying things which she should not be saying. Husband passes away, a woman starts making statements which does not befit the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a loss in business. A person starts having thoughts about Allah, thoughts which they shouldn't be having about Allah. They start complaining about Allah. So many times we see that in moments of sabr, in exams of sabr, we are not able to succeed. And the reason why knowing this is so important, knowing the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has these two exams, will test all of us with these two exams. This is so central because this is the central idea of life. That in our life, every moment, it's a test. Either a test of sabr or a test of shukr. And in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, oh my servants, I'm going to test you every moment with these halat of sabr and shukr. When you're going through good times, if you do shukr, and when you're going through bad times, if you do sabr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with the people who do shukr. Allah is razi with the people who do shukr, He is also razi with the people who do sabr. Every moment you can attain the rada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every moment you can attain the pleasure of Allah ta'ala by doing shukr in the moments of shukr, by doing sabr in the moments of sabr. Every moment you can get the rada of Allah. For example, Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam was a very Jalilul Qadr Nabi of Allah Ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him kingdom, given him innumerable blessings, and he was someone who would do a lot of shukr of Allah Ta'ala. On the other hand, there's another Nabi of Allah Ta'ala by the name of Sayyidina Ayyub alayhi salatu wasalam, Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salam, and he was tested by illness, by an illness. And he exercised sabr during that illness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him his rada, his pleasure as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on one hand, Sayyidina Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salam, he is doing shukr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses him with this khitab, with this address, the ni'mal abd, such a beautiful servant. And on the other hand, Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salam is tested by a sickness, and when he does sabr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses him with that same address, that same khitab, ni'mal abd. Such a wonderful servant. Both are getting this khitab, ni'mal abd, best servant, wonderful servant. So the lesson that we are getting, that Allah Ta'ala is giving us is that, oh my servants, that if you do shukr for the blessings that you enjoy, then you will be ni'mal abd. You will be one of my best servants. And when you do sabr in difficult times, again, you will be ni'mal abd. You will be one of my best servants. So try to become ni'mal abd. Live your life in such a way that you are ni'mal abd. You are the best of my servants. And you will attain success in the dunya, and you will attain success in akhirah as well. So this is the core lesson, that may Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq that we can do shukr in the moments of shukr, and we can do sabr in the moments of sabr. And in this way, every moment we can attain the rada and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until finally we pass away from this world, and then we can get the didar, the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannatul Firdaus. The way the central idea emerges from the surah is in a very beautiful manner. I'm trying to complete. I want to show the link between this central message and how the surah is giving us this central message. In Surah Kahf, there are 5 stories. This I want all of us to remember, because we'll be doing these stories sequentially. Surah Yusuf was easy because it was just one story. The story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. Here it's different. Surah Kahf, there are 5 stories. One story is about Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And the story of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam is right at the center in the surah. It's like the qalb, the heart of the surah. There are 2 stories before that, 2 stories after that. Right in the middle is the story of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. The ayat, the verses are few, but the story is there about Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam and Shaitan. And that's why normally when a person, they read those ayat, they are not aware, they're not cognizant of that story. That middle story of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, this is the lubbe lubab, the core, the essence, which is right in the middle, the qalb of the surah. And in this story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the 2 papers, the 2 exams, the exam of sabr and the exam of shukr. which I've already mentioned before. And this is the center, the qalb of the surah. Now, before Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, there are two stories. What are those two stories? Those two stories are stories about the awamun nas, about the common people. They're stories about common people. The first story out of those two, any two stories before Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, these two stories are about the common people. And there will be two stories which will be after the story of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, and those two stories are about some special people. So keep this order in mind. Central story, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam and Shaitan. Two stories before, which are about common people, stories about common people. Two stories afterwards, which are stories about some special individuals. All right. Now let's look at the first two stories, which are about the common people. The first of those is the story of Ashab Kahf. There were some young men who went inside a cave, and these young men, they were given the exam of sabr. Remember sabr shukr? They were given the exam of sabr, and they were those who were successful in this exam of sabr. They did sabr. They left. How did they do sabr? They left their home, they left their community in order to safeguard their iman, went inside a cave. So all the takalif, the difficulty that they had to bear on this path, they did that. They did sabr in order to safeguard their iman. In other words, they succeeded in this paper, in this exam of sabr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala included them among His beloved servants. Allah ta'ala chose them. Allah ta'ala granted them Qubuliya. So these were young men. These were ordinary people, common people. Then after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the second story, which is called the story of Sahibi Jannatain, a man who was given two gardens. He was a common man, a man who was given two gardens. This was a person whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given a lot of wealth, a lot of money, health, wealth, honor. He was also an ordinary man, not a special individual, just had a lot of wealth. But he was among the awam and nas, the common generality, the masses of the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him go through an exam as well. What was the name of his exam? It was a shukr. The paper was shukr. The exam was that, oh my servant, I've given you so many blessings. Now you should do shukr for these blessings. However, this person, he was in love with the wealth that he had, and he thought that this is all my doing, my intelligence, my effort. And he was swayed away from the path of haqq by his own nafs, gave in to the unlawful desires of his nafs, and he forgot Allah Ta'ala, became ghafil of Allah. And not only did he forget Allah, but he also did not have iman upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hence he failed in this paper, in this exam. In this exam of shukr, he failed. So let's again do a quick recap. Before Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, there are two stories. Both stories are about common people. First was about Ashab Kahf. Their exam was the exam of sabr, and they passed that exam. Second story is about a person who had a lot of wealth, Sahib Jannatain. His exam was that of shukr, but he failed that exam of shukr. Both are common people. Then after these two stories, we have the story of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, which we already did. After Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, there are two other stories, which are stories about special individuals, khas individual. The first one is about Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Obviously, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam is a prophet of Allah, very khas, very special individual. Kalimullah, Ulul Azm Anbiya. He was among the Khawas. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him through the exam of Sabr. Allah ta'ala took the exam of Sabr from him. And at one point in that story, we'll see that someone would say to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam that you will not be able to do Sabr. And the result was also the exact same thing, that Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, he kept on asking questions, and there was some deficiency that was left in this paper. And in Sahih Bukhari Sharif, the Prophet ﷺ referred to this incident and said that Yarhamullahu Musa lavadidna law sabara hatta yuqassa alayna min amrihima. That may Allah send mercy and rahmat upon Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. We wished if only Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam would have done sabr, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have given us more details about this story. So if we reflect upon this statement, we see that there was some shortcoming left in this paper of sabr. And we'll come to that later on. Right? That there was an individual who was doing things which were khilaf shara. And Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam was not able to understand that why is he doing these things which are khilaf the Sharia. So that's why he kept on asking that why did you kill this young boy? Why are you making this hole in the boat? Why are you erecting this wall which is about to fall down when these people are not even hosting you? So he kept on asking that why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And this is ajib that in this story, the word of sabr is mentioned repeatedly. وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبَرًا. So the ayat are telling us that this was an exam of sabr. And he is also saying that if you will not be able to do sabr. And if you're not able to do sabr, and if I'm not able to do sabr, then I will separate myself away from you. He's saying this to his teacher. And then truly there comes a point in the story where he says that Haza firaku baini wa bainik. That now let's part our ways, let's separate from each other. So what we see here in this surah, by giving us this story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us a deeper lesson here, that look, this exam of sabr, it comes in a person's life, and even ordinary people like us, we will be tested by Allah ta'ala with the exam of sabr. And even those who are the chosen ones, the special ones, the khas individuals, even they are tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this exam of sabr. And it may happen that ordinary people might sometimes pass this exam of sabr, and some special chosen individual may not successfully be able to pass the exam of sabr. And many times the converse can happen, that special people might pass the exam of sabr, but ordinary people like us, we are unable to pass the exam of sabr. So the real maqsad and the goal is that whether ordinary person or a special person, my exam will come for everyone. My exam is the same for everyone, that, oh my servants, all of you are my servants. I am your Rabb, I am your Lord. And if when I test you with an exam of sabr, then you should exercise sabr in those moments. And when I test you with the imtihan, with an exam of shukr, then you should display your shukr and gratitude for the blessings that you have. And then finally, the last story, which is also a story about a special individual, khas person, that is about Sikandar Zulkarnain, the story of Zulkarnain. He was also a special individual. Now, here, if someone could ask that why was Zulkarnain special? He wasn't a Nabi of Allah Ta'ala. So the reply will be given that he was the king of that time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him a lot of knowledge, basirat, insight, and he wanted to establish the commands of Allah on the land of Allah. Wanted to establish the hukum of Allah upon the ard of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a person who is the king of its time, king of his time, and along with that also has this goal of life that I want to establish the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the land of Allah, then truly that person is a very khas individual, very special person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a very high rank. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Zulkarnain through the exam of shukr. The test that came in his life was shukr. The test that came in Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam's life was sabr. You see the symmetry, right? Sabr and now shukr. And the first two stories, it was sabr and shukr. Here also sabr and shukr. So the test that came in his life was that of shukr. Allah Ta'ala gave him a lot of blessings of the dunya. Whatever he wanted, Allah Ta'ala gave it to him. And when Allah Ta'ala gave him all of those blessings, and he did shukr upon those blessings, he passed the test of shukr. He passed the test of shukr. Normally, when you have these blessings, a person becomes arrogant, they become heedless of Allah Ta'ala, they start boasting before others. But Zulkarnain was a pious king, not arrogant but humble. He said that this is not my kamal. All of this he attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah Ta'ala gave this to me and I'm obedient to Allah Ta'ala. Because he did shukr, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala included that story also here in this surah. So Zulkarnain, he passed this exam of shukr. So now we can appreciate this beautiful harmony that we find in this surah. Go back. The central idea was that sabr and shukr, two papers every person will have in their life, every moment, two papers. And there are 5 stories. Again, let's review. There are 5 stories in this surah. The central story is that of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam and Shaitan, which teaches us that just like Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam was tested by sabr and shukr, in the same way, Bani Adam will also be tested by sabr and shukr. Then there are 2 stories before and 2 stories afterwards. The 2 stories before are about common people. The 2 stories afterwards are about special people. The 2 stories before, which are about the common people, the first story is about Ashab-e Kahf. Their test was the test of sabr. They passed the test. The second was about the person Sahib-e Jannatain, and his exam was that of shukr. He failed that test. Passing sabr, failing shukr. Then the remain the central story, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. Then after that, two more stories, which are about special individuals. First one is about Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. Allah sent the exam of sabr, and there was some shortcoming left in that exam of sabr. And second story was about Zulkarnain, the king. This was an imtihan, an exam of shukr. He was successful in that exam of shukr. So subhanallah, such a beautiful sequence. So if we can now appreciate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this surah in such a beautiful manner that a person is amazed at the balance, the harmony, the perfection, the central idea right at the center, and two stories before, two stories afterwards to highlight that this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us in this dunya. That whether you are ordinary person, special person, my exam is the same for everyone. My exam is the same for everyone. I will examine you through sabr. I will examine you through shukr. And here are the stories. The stories of those who were successful in the exams of sabr. And these are the stories of those who were unsuccessful in the exam of sabr. This is the story of someone who was successful in the exam of shukr. And this is the story of someone who was unsuccessful in the exam of shukr. So, inshallah, next class, we'll start with the first story, which is about Ashab-e Kahf. And we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us these two sifat. May Allah make us people of sabr. May Allah ta'ala make us people of shukr. May Allah ta'ala make us such that every moment we are able to do what is pleasing to Allah ta'ala. We are able to attain the rada of Allah ta'ala. And we make dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq that we can also learn and memorize this surah, Surah Al-Kahf. May Allah ta'ala grant us tawfiq that we can develop a habit of regularly reciting this surah every day. And all the fazail which are mentioned about this surah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us those fazail in our life as well. The virtues, the merits, the reward. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the barakah of this surah, may Allah ta'ala protect us from all kinds of fitna in our life, for all kinds of fitna which are coming from within the Muslim Ummah, for all kinds of fitnas which are coming from outside the Muslim Ummah, for all the fitnas which are happening right now in the dunya, for all the fitnas which are about to happen later on in the dunya. May Allah Ta'ala also save us by the barakah of this surah against the most severe and the most intense of fitna, which is the fitnas of Dajjal and all the precursors of Dajjal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this dua and accept this intention from all of us tonight. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, we'll continue with this next week. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.